Good morning/afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Graceful Tales. We're so glad you're here with us today. In this video, we'll be diving into the powerful story of Naaman's healing from leprosy found in the book of 2 Kings. It's a story of faith, healing, and the amazing grace of God. If you enjoy the message, we invite you to share this video with your friends and family. Let's spread the word and inspire others together. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that bring hope and wisdom. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the video, so let's dive in. This story is not just about physical healing, but about spiritual transformation. It is a story of God's sovereignty, the challenge of humility, the power of obedience, and the richness of grace. It's a story about how God reaches into the lives of individuals, even those who seem far from Him, and draws them to Himself in ways that often defy our expectations. Let's begin by introducing the main character of this story, Naaman. Naaman was not just anyone. He was the commander of the army of Aram, Syria, a powerful nation that was often in conflict with Israel. This position came with immense power, wealth, and influence. In the eyes of his people, Naaman was a national hero, the one responsible for leading the army to victory in many battles. Even his king had great respect for him. In fact, 2 Kings 5 verse 1 tells us, "Now Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram." He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. This phrase reminds us that even though Naaman was not an Israelite, God had used him to bring victory to Aram. But despite his success and status, Naaman had one thing he could not change: he had leprosy. 2 Kings 5 verse 1 continues, "He had leprosy." Leprosy was a feared disease in the ancient world. It was not just a physical ailment, it was a social death sentence. Those who had leprosy were cast out from society. They were declared ceremonially unclean and could not participate in religious or community life. For Naaman, this was a source of great personal distress. No amount of military victories, wealth, or power could rid him of his disease. He was, in a very real sense, helpless. And this is a theme we will come back to often. No matter how much we may accomplish in life, we all face challenges, pain, and weaknesses that only God can heal. This brings us to the first unexpected hero of our story, the young Israelite girl. This girl had been taken captive during a raid by the Arameans. She was now serving as a maid in Naaman's household. Her situation was tragic. She was separated from her family and homeland, living as a servant in a foreign land. But in spite of her circumstances, this young girl saw Naaman's suffering and chose to speak up. 2 Kings 5 verses 2 to 3 says, "Now bands of raiders from Aram had gone out and had taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, 'If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria. He would cure him of his leprosy.'" Think about this for a moment. Here was a girl who had every reason to be bitter. She was a captive, living in a foreign land, away from everything she knew and loved. Yet, instead of holding on to her bitterness, she chose to show kindness and faith. She had heard of the prophet Elisha in Israel and believed that God could heal Naaman through him. Her simple faith led her to share this hope with Naaman's wife. It was a small, seemingly insignificant action, but it set the stage for Naaman's healing. Naaman, in his desperation, listened to the girl's suggestion. He could have easily ignored the words of a young servant, but he chose to take her seriously. This decision reveals something important about Naaman. Despite his pride, his position, and his wealth, he was still humble enough to listen to someone outside his social circle. 2 Kings 5 verses 4 to 5 continues, "Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. 'By all means, go,' the king of Aram replied. 'I will send a letter to the king of Israel.' So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. This decision to seek out the prophet in Israel was pivotal. It shows that Naaman, despite his stature, was not too proud to seek help from a foreign land and a people who were enemies of his nation. And it also reveals how God uses the most unlikely people, like the young Israelite girl, to bring others to him. Naaman went to his king, and the king of Aram, eager to help his trusted commander, sent Naaman to Israel with a letter to the king of Israel. Along with this letter, Naaman brought an extravagant gift: 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. 2 Kings 5 verse 5 tells us, the letter that he took to the king of Israel read, "With this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you so that you may cure him of his leprosy." These gifts were meant to pay for the healing that Naaman believed he would receive. The fact that Naaman brought such a lavish gift shows that he expected something grand in return. He likely thought that healing would come through some sort of royal or magical ceremony, or through a powerful act of divination. When Naaman arrived at the king of Israel with the letter and the gifts, the king of Israel was immediately distressed. 2 Kings 5 verse 7 says, "As soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robes and said, 'Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this man send someone to me to be cured of his leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me.'" The king was terrified and confused. He misunderstood the purpose of the letter and thought it was a trap. This moment reveals something important. Despite all of Israel's history of miraculous events, even the king of Israel had forgotten the power of God. The king was so focused on his own limitations that he failed to see that God could intervene in this situation. This is where Elisha, the prophet of God, steps in. 2 Kings 5 verse 8 says, "When Elisha the man of God heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him this message: 'Why have you torn your robes? Have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel.'" Elisha's response is significant because it points to the core issue of this story. The God of Israel is not limited by human power or expectations. Elisha understood that this was not just about Naaman being healed, it was about Naaman encountering the one true God. When Naaman arrived at Elisha's house, expecting a grand and ceremonial display, he was instead met with a simple message. 2 Kings 5 verse 10 says, "Elisha sent a messenger to say to him, 'Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored and you will be cleansed.'" This must have been a shocking message for Naaman. He was expecting a ritual involving great fanfare, perhaps a grand prayer or a waving of hands. But instead, Elisha gave him a simple, humble instruction to wash in the Jordan River. Naaman's reaction was one of anger and frustration. 2 Kings 5 verse 11 tells us, "But Naaman went away angry and said, 'I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot and cure me of my leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed?'" Naaman was offended by the simplicity of the instructions. He didn't understand why God would choose something so ordinary and humble as a river to heal him. He was expecting a display of divine power, something spectacular. In a moment of grace and humility, Naaman's servants intervened. 2 Kings 5 verse 13 says, "Naaman's servants went to him and said, 'My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed?'" These words were enough to convince Naaman to humble himself. He went down to the Jordan River and dipped himself 7 times, as Elisha had instructed. 2 Kings 5 verse 14 continues, "So he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him, and his flesh was restored and became clean like that of a young boy." At this moment, Naaman was not just healed physically, he was transformed spiritually. He returned to Elisha and declared, "Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel." 2 Kings 5 verse 15 tells us. This statement was a powerful declaration of faith. Naaman had encountered the living God, and his life was forever changed. His healing was not just a physical cure, it was a spiritual awakening. He understood that God, and only God, could heal him, and he acknowledged the sovereignty of the God of Israel. Naaman offered Elisha gifts, but Elisha refused, explaining that God's grace cannot be bought. Instead, Naaman asked for 2 mule loads of soil to take back to Syria, so that he could worship the God of Israel on Israeli soil. 2 Kings 5 verse 17 says, "If you will not, please let me, your servant, be given as much earth as a pair of mules can carry, for your servant will never again make burnt offerings and sacrifices to any other god but the Lord." But, as we know, the story doesn't end here. Elisha's servant Gehazi, driven by greed, ran after Naaman and lied to him, claiming that Elisha had sent him to accept gifts. 2 Kings 5 verse 20 tells us, "Gehazi, the servant of Elisha the man of God, said to himself, 'My master was too easy on Naaman this Aramean, by not accepting from him what he brought. As surely as the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something from him.'" Gehazi's actions were motivated by selfishness and dishonesty. He wanted to profit from Naaman's healing. But Elisha knew what had happened, and as a result of Gehazi's greed, he was struck with Naaman's leprosy. 2 Kings 5 verse 27 concludes, "Naaman's leprosy will cling to you and to your descendants forever." And Gehazi went out from Elisha's presence, and his skin was as white as snow. As we reflect on the story of Naaman, we see several key lessons. First, we learn that God's grace is available to everyone, regardless of nationality, status, or past. Naaman was a foreigner, a man of great power, but God reached out to him. This story also challenges our understanding of how God works. Naaman expected God to act in grand, dramatic ways, but God's healing came through simple obedience. Sometimes, God's most powerful work happens in the most ordinary of ways. Naaman's story also calls us to examine our own humility and obedience. Like Naaman, we can sometimes resist God's ways because they don't meet our expectations. But true faith requires humility, acknowledging that God knows best and trusting Him even when we don't understand. Finally, this story reminds us of the transformative power of God's grace. Naaman's healing was both physical and spiritual, and his life was forever changed by his encounter with the living God. As we reflect on this story in our own lives, let us be open to God's work in unexpected places and in unexpected ways. Let us trust in His power to heal and transform us, and let us humbly obey His word, even when it seems simple or unconventional. And may we always remember that God's grace is freely given, and it is available to anyone who seeks Him with a humble heart. Thank you so much for watching here at Graceful Tales. We hope you were inspired by the incredible story of Naaman's healing from leprosy in the book of 2 Kings. It's a powerful reminder of God's grace and the importance of faith. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss out on future inspiring stories. We truly appreciate your support, and we look forward to sharing more with you soon. Blessings to you all.